In an instant, everything collapsed. The man who had been your wall and support for years turned out to be an absolute void. You've been living with someone for 15 years, and then you wake up and realize you've never known them. The cold realization that a calculating monster was hiding under the mask of an ideal family. Which is more frightening, to lose a child or to find out that the killer was sleeping next to him all this time? This is a story about how love turns into a trap and how to survive when the truth is deadly. On the day my only daughter was buried, I could barely resist the unbearable grief. She was only 19 years old, and my husband didn't even shed a tear. He just kept silent and stared into the void. A few hours later, he demanded that all her personal belongings be removed immediately. I put it down to his unusual way of experiencing grief, but that night I heard him talking on the phone. She doesn't know anything about it. Everything is going according to plan. I didn't know then that my daughter had left a special message for me that would completely turn the whole situation around. The thought of the earth hitting the lid of the sarcophagus made me flinch. Each of these heavy, damp lumps seemed to fall directly on my wounded heart. My legs buckled, and if it hadn't been for Cynthia, my old high school friend, who was clutching my elbow tightly, I would have collapsed right there, soaked by the November downpour. "Hold on, Vera, dear, hold on," her voice whispered, but the words seemed to come through the thickness of seawater, losing all meaning for me. The world around him lost its shape, turning into a blurred watercolor drawing, which was mercilessly blurred by the water. Blurred outlines of people in dark clothes, lowered heads, muffled words of sympathy. Only the coffin with the remains of my Dahlia, my only girl, remained painfully, unbearably real. 19 years old, only 19. How many aspirations, how many dreams, how much joyful laughter. And all of this came to a sudden end on the expressway late at night, in the mangled wreck of her first car, which we donated. The official conclusion is that she lost control on a slippery road. How ordinary and monstrous it is. I looked up, trying to find my spouse in the crowd. Howard stood slightly apart from the main group of mourners. Immaculately straight posture, tightly compressed lip line, impenetrable expression under a black umbrella. In 16 years of living together, I have never learned to understand what lies behind this mask of icy restraint, especially over the past couple of years, when something has subtly but irrevocably changed in our relationship. He became a stranger, distant, as if his mind existed somewhere in another reality where my path was blocked. He wasn't crying. I have not seen a single stingy tear in his eyes since the moment we were informed of this terrible news. Only this absolute chilling composure, which scared me much more than any hysteria. "Please accept our deepest condolences," someone said, politely touching my shoulder. I nodded automatically, not distinguishing faces, not listening to the word. What difference does it make who utters these empty, meaningless phrases? Dahlia is gone. My baby, my only child, my continuation in this world, my main meaning. I remember the day she was born, the little lump that wrinkled his nose so funny. I remember her first step, her first word, Mom. I remember how we used to read children's books together, and how she would gently pull my curls as she fell asleep. And Howard, he came into our lives when Dahlia was 3 years old. I was absolutely sure that he loved her like his own daughter. He raised her, taught her to ride a two-wheeled bike, and checked her homework. Or was it just my imagination? Was this affection sincere, or was it just part of the role of an exemplary spouse and parent that he had been so skillfully fulfilling all these years? The farewell ceremony was coming to an end. People gradually began to disperse, casting glances at me full of regret, which was as necessary to me now as living water to a dead man. Howard finally approached and coldly touched my forearm. "We should leave," he said in a low voice. "The rain is getting heavier." I couldn't move. To leave Dahlia here alone in this damp, cold earth. How can I leave? How can I leave her? "Faith." There was a steely, commanding note in his voice that brooked no argument. "We won't change anything if we stay here. It's just self-torture. We need to think about those who are still alive. Which living ones? Everything in me ceased to exist the moment I saw her body in the city morgue. I sat in the car with my forehead pressed against the cool window. Raindrops dripped down the glass, as if the world outside the window was crying with me. Howard drove confidently. His profile looked like it was carved out of marble. Not a single muscle twitched, not a shadow of suffering, not a drop of sorrow. Just an icy, detached composure, as if he was just taking his business suit to the laundry instead of returning from his daughter's funeral. "We need to stop at one address," he suddenly announced, turning off the familiar highway onto an unfamiliar alley. I struggled to focus my gaze on him. "To the Svetly Put Charitable Foundation. I want to clarify their work schedule and conditions for accepting donations." I stared at my husband uncomprehendingly. Howard gave me a short, almost annoyed look. "We need to sort out Dahlia's things and give them to others as soon as possible." Something cold and sharp squeezed my heart, choking off my breathing. "But Dahlia's things, it's only been a few hours since the funeral." "That's exactly why," he snapped, without taking his eyes off the road. "The longer we cling to the past, the more difficult it will be to move forward. It's like ripping off a Band-Aid. It's better to do it quickly and decisively. Believe me, it will get easier this way." "Easier? To whom?" "To him." I looked at him with horror and complete incomprehension. This was not the Howard I once fell in love with. Or maybe I just never really knew him, deluding myself all these years. "I'm not ready for this," I whispered softly, feeling the words stick in my throat. "And you'll never be ready." His voice became frankly harsh. "You can't turn her bedroom into a crypt. It's unhealthy. We must continue to live. We still have each other." Those last words sounded so fake, so inappropriate, that I wanted to scream. We haven't had each other for a long time. We were two strangers living under the same roof, connected by a common daughter, and now that connection has disappeared. We spent the rest of the journey in complete silence. At home, I immediately went up to our bedroom, unable to talk anymore or listen to his monstrously heartless words. I took a sedative prescribed by the doctor and fell into a heavy, anxious sleep, resembling a viscous swamp from which there is no way out. I dreamed about Dahlia. She stood on the edge of a rocky cliff and looked at me, trying to say something, but the wind carried away her words. She held out her arms to me, but I couldn't take a single step, as if my feet were rooted to the ground. And behind her stood a dark, vague figure, and I realized whose silhouette it was. I woke up to the sound of a voice. Howard was talking on his cell phone, standing in the hallway. The clock on the bedside table read 2:30 in the morning. "Everything is going according to schedule," came his muffled but clear voice. "We'll get rid of these things tomorrow." She's too heartbroken to even suspect anything. "No, don't worry. Everything will be clean. The main thing is that the documents should be signed before the end of this week. Just follow our instructions." I froze, afraid to even breathe. What is this plan? What kind of documents? Who did he make a deal with? When he returned to the bedroom, I pretended to be asleep, feeling my heart racing. There was something sinister in his words, in his intonation, but my grief-stricken mind refused to analyze, refused to believe the worst. I blamed everything on my condition, on the grief that made me see danger where there was none. In the morning, I was awakened by the rustle of packing cardboard. Howard was carrying a stack of stacked boxes into Dahlia's room. He moved with a businesslike energy that seemed sacrilegious in our house, steeped in silence and sadness. "Great morning," he said in a cheerful, almost joyful tone that made me uneasy. "I've agreed on everything. The truck will arrive in a day. We need to pack everything today and tomorrow." He placed a paper printed on an office printer in front of me. It was a detailed list. "Here is the list of items to collect. I've already mentioned what can be given to the fund and what can just be thrown away. Don't forget her wardrobe, her desk, and all those trinkets." I took the list with trembling hands. Trinkets. That's what he called my daughter's whole world. Her drawings, her prizes for scientific contests, her collection of funny figurines, which she collected from the age of 5. For him, all this was just junk that needed to be disposed of. Howard, I can't. My voice broke, becoming a hoarse sound. It's only been 24 hours. How can you be in such a hurry? Her husband's face was contorted with rage. Stop clinging to the past. He sharply raised his tone. We need to move on. Do you think it's easy for me? Do you think I'm not worried? There was something so cold, so alien in his eyes that I recoiled. It wasn't grief. It was anger. Anger that I'm interfering with his plans. Noticing my reaction, he instantly softened, sat down next to me, put his arm around my shoulders. I'm sorry, Vera. I'm at my limit too. I just think that decisive action is the best method. It will help both of us. The sooner we remove all these painful reminders, the sooner the wound will heal. Trust me. I nodded dumbly, unable to find the strength to argue. Maybe he's really right. Maybe I'm drowning in grief, and he's trying to save us the only way he can. I desperately wanted to believe it. After breakfast, which I still couldn't touch, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Evelyn Stone, our neighbor from the first floor, stood in the doorway with a large pecan pie in her hands. Vera, dear, the old lady hugged me. What a misfortune. What a terrible misfortune. I brought a memorial pie. Be strong, honey. I took her to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Mrs. Stone was saying something comforting, but the words didn't reach my mind. When I went out to the pantry to get sugar, I heard their muffled dialogue in the living room. Did you have time to take out an insurance policy before the incident? The neighbor asked. Hush, said Howard sharply. Not now. The wall is thin. I froze. What kind of insurance? Why is the neighbor asking about this? What are they talking about? But when I returned, they were already discussing the upcoming winter. That short phrase stuck in my head like a splinter, but I pushed it away. You never know what it could be about. Maybe about the insurance on his house or on his work SUV. After the neighbor left, Howard said that he needed to go to the office to sort out some formalities with family leave. Left alone, I slowly, as if on stiff legs, went up to my daughter's room. Dahlia's room, bright, with cream walls and white furniture. The poster of her favorite musical group. Photos with classmates, a stack of textbooks on the table. Everything is as usual, as if she just went out for a minute and is about to return, filling the space with her laughter. I sat down on her bed and ran my hand over the soft blanket. We've spent so many evenings here discussing her future. She wanted to become a veterinarian, dreamed of going to Kenya and saving elephants. Can you imagine, Mom? I'll be able to treat a real lion. Her clear, happy voice seemed to still resound in this room. With a heavy sigh, I opened the closet and began automatically putting her clothes in a box. Every blouse, every dress evoked a wave of breathtaking memories. This is the dress from the high school prom. Here's this funny scarf that we chose together last winter. I took out a black silk dress, her favorite. She bought it with her first salary from a summer internship. Look, Mom, I'm wearing it just like that actress from the movie. I pressed the dress to my face, inhaling the subtle scent of her perfume, a mixture of vanilla and something subtly native, her own scent. Howard entered the room without knocking. He came back earlier than I expected. When he saw me with the dress in my hands, he frowned, quickly approached, and snatched the silk fabric from my hands. Don't torture yourself. No one will need it anymore. He dropped it into an open charity box and left without waiting for an answer, closing the door firmly behind him. I stayed sitting on the floor, looking at this crumpled black spot in a cardboard box. Something was happening, something terrible that I didn't understand. My gaze fell on Dahlia's backpack, abandoned by the table, the one she was with on her last day. I pulled it up to me, unzipped it, textbooks, notebooks, a pencil case with colorful markers. Everything is so casual, so alive. I took out my biology textbook, her favorite subject. He was covered in bookmark stickers. Flipping through the pages, I noticed an enclosed piece of paper folded in 4. Not a bookmark, but a note. I unwrapped it. Dahlia's handwriting, uneven, hurried. Mommy, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me. It wasn't an accident. Please look in the secret compartment of my backpack. That's all I could find. Don't trust Howard. Be extremely careful. I love you very much. My heart started pounding. I reread the note 3 times, then 4 times in disbelief. What's the secret pocket? I started frantically feeling around the backpack, tearing the lining with my nails, and found it. A small zippered compartment, sewn so artfully that it was almost invisible. There was a thin folder inside. My hands were shaking so much that I could barely open it. And what I saw inside made the ground drop from under my feet. Copies of insurance policies issued 4 months ago. One is for Dahlia's life in the amount of $10 million. The second is for mine for a similar amount. The beneficiary in both cases is Howard. Then there are statements from his bank accounts, huge debts, overdue loans from several financial institutions. The total amount was approaching $15 million. Letters from collection agencies. He was bankrupt, although he continued to pretend that his consulting business was booming. Then there were printouts of his correspondence in the messaging system with a certain woman named Caitlin. Soon, my love, very soon we will solve all the problems. I'll get rid of the ballast, and we'll start a new life. We have enough for a villa by the ocean and for everything we dreamed of. Ballast. He's talking about Dahlia and me. And the worst part, the last file. An audio recording that Dahlia apparently made on her phone, accidentally overhearing his conversation in her home office. Howard's voice is quiet, businesslike, and dispassionate. No one can prove anything. The main thing is to make it look like an accident. Everything will be completed in a couple of weeks. This will solve the first part of the problem. The first part. Dahlia was the first part, and I was obviously the second. The air is out. I was sitting on the floor of my dead daughter's room, surrounded by evidence that she was killed by my own husband, the man who raised her from the age of 3, the man I had lived with for 16 years. He killed her in cold blood, deliberately, for the sake of money and a new life with his mistress. And now he was going to kill me. Panic hit me like an icy wave. We need to run now. But where and what to do with these clues? Downstairs, the front door slammed loudly. He's back. I quickly shoved the folder back into my backpack, and the backpack went to the only place I didn't think it would look, the ventilation grate in our bathroom. I came down to dinner wearing a mask of deep sorrow and complete exhaustion. It was the best acting of my life, because behind the mask there was a primal, chilling horror. Every step he took, every look he gave me now seemed like a mortal threat. He ordered food from an expensive restaurant, my favorite pasta with lobster, and opened a bottle of expensive wine, as if trying to make up for his daytime harshness. "You haven't eaten much since yesterday," he said, filling the glasses. "It is necessary to maintain strength." I sank into the chair opposite, feeling like a mouse trapped in the same enclosure with a huge boa constrictor. Any movement I made, any word I uttered could expose me. The briefcase with the compromising materials was in a safe hiding place. By the way, I have transferred a large sum to the Children's Charity Fund on our behalf. I think it's fair. I looked at my husband intently. Where did he get the funds if he was deeply in debt? Only if it is an insurance payment. He has already received money for the death of our Dahlia. "That's very generous of you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, especially considering our precarious financial situation. Howard froze for a split second and then shrugged indifferently. The company's business has recently improved. A sudden major contract. He added, "Besides, there are things more important than just money." He raised his glass as if about to make a traditional toast to the memory of Dahlia and to our future together. I caught a strange movement of his hand. For a moment, it seemed to me that he had thrown something into my wine with lightning speed, a tiny pill that had dissolved without a trace. Or was it just my imagination, triggered by paranoia after everything I'd found out? "For the memory," I repeated softly, lifting the glass, but I didn't dare drink. Howard didn't take his eyes off me, waiting for me to take a sip. I carefully lowered the glass and returned to my portion. I'm so exhausted today. I think I'll go rest early. Drink the wine, he said urgently. It will help you calm down. I deliberately chose your favorite, the Cabernet. I forced a smile. Thanks. But it seems to me that alcohol will only worsen my migraines now. I'd better take a sleeping pill. I stood up from the table, feeling all my muscles tense under his piercing gaze. Without looking back, I went upstairs to the bedroom, locked the door, and clung to it, trembling with terror. He added something to the wine. I was almost sure of it. He wanted me to fall asleep soundly. But for what purpose? I locked myself in the bathroom. I needed someone I could completely trust. But who could it be? All our mutual friends? They can't. My parents passed away a long time ago, and then I thought of Robert Blake, an old friend of my late father, Daniel Warren's. He was a detective in the homicide squad. We haven't kept in touch for many years, but he used to visit us a lot, even before I got married. He asked to help me. I found his phone number in a dilapidated notebook that I kept in a drawer with important papers. My fingers trembled slightly as I pressed the buttons. "Robert," I said when he picked up the phone. "This is Vera Warren's. Do you remember me?" "Faith? Of course I remember." The astonishment could be clearly heard in his voice. "What happened?" "I've heard about your daughter's tragedy. Please accept my most sincere condolences." "Thank you, Robert. I need your help. Immediately. It's a matter of life and death." He made a pause. "What's wrong, Vera? Tell me." "Not on the phone? Can we cross paths tomorrow as soon as possible?" "Absolutely. Where and when?" I gave him the address of the nondescript Cozy Kettle Cafe on the outskirts of Denver at 8:30 a.m. And please don't tell anyone about this. "I get it. I'll be alone." In the morning, I had to stage a whole performance to get out of the mansion. I made up a story about having to go to the office for important official papers. Howard was full of suspicion. He wanted to give me a ride in person, but I insisted that I could handle it on my own. He called me a taxi service through his mobile app. I immediately realized that he intended to track my movement. This jeopardized the whole plan. I had to act spontaneously. I gave the driver the address of the corporate building, and on the way I asked him to stop at the nearest pharmacy, citing an unbearable migraine. After getting out of the car, I immediately hailed another taxi and went to meet Robert. He was already waiting for me, a tall, gray-haired man with very penetrating eyes. He didn't waste time on empty pleasantries. "What happened? You seem scared." I looked around, lowered my voice. "Dahlia died for a reason. Howard planned the accident for the insurance policies, and now it's my turn." I pulled out my phone and opened the folder with the photos of the documents. Dahlia has unearthed everything. She's put together a whole case. Robert Blake studied the photographs carefully. His face became increasingly stern and unyielding. "When did you discover this?" "Yesterday." Dahlia left a short note. "Howard is in a hurry to clean up everything, erase the evidence. He has already ordered a transport company today to liquidate its property." Robert tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the tabletop. "There is no direct evidence of his involvement in the disaster here. Indirect, yes, but this is not enough for an arrest warrant. We need the testimony of an auto mechanic or his personal confession." "Then find them." I leaned forward. "Interrogate the car mechanic. Do something before he takes my life, too." Robert covered my hand with his. "I will help you, Vera, but we must act very carefully. If your husband is really a cold-blooded killer, he's extremely dangerous, especially if he feels threatened." He took a sip of his coffee. "You can't go back to the mansion." "Impossible," I shook my head. "He'll figure it out right away. Besides, the original documents were left there, in a secret place. I have to extract them. It's too risky. I have to. It's my only way to protect myself." Robert sighed heavily. "Okay, but I'll give you a miniature voice recorder. Attach it to your clothes. You'll be recording all the conversations. If he's lucky, he'll inadvertently let it slip. He pulled a tiny listening device the size of a button out of his pocket. The battery should last for 24 hours. The recording goes directly to this device. I took the microphone, hiding it in the pocket of my blouse. Call this number. He wrote the numbers on a paper napkin anytime and send a control message every 3 hours. If you miss even one communication session, I will come with a response team. He squeezed my hand tightly. Be extremely careful. Don't provoke him. Pretend you don't know anything. I'm going to look for a mechanic and this Caitlin. I returned to the mansion when the movers were already carrying out the last cardboard boxes. Howard met me at the entrance. His face was tense. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you. A meeting, I lied calmly. Then I went to the accounting department. He looked at me intently as if trying to catch me in a lie. I was worried. I thought you were feeling unwell. It's okay. I tried to smile as I walked into the house. Dahlia's room was completely empty. The bare walls, the empty space where her bed had been, her desk. It was as if she had never existed. I was overcome with such despair that I could barely stand on my feet. He erased it, eradicated it from our lives, from our home. The first thing I did was go to the bathroom. I had to pick up my backpack. I turned on the water to muffle the noise and carefully removed the ventilation grate. Empty. There was no backpack. The blood froze in my veins. He found it. He discovered the hiding place and took away all the evidence. When? How? If only... Unless he's been following me all this time, unless he knew from the beginning that I'd discovered something. I came out of the bathroom and froze. Howard was standing in the bedroom doorway. Are you looking for something? He asked in a deceptively soft voice. No, I was just washing my face. My heart was pounding so loudly that I thought he should have heard it. It's weird. I thought you were looking for something in the vent. He knew. All this time, he knew and played with me like a predator with its prey. There's mold there, I lied, clinging to my last hope. He smiled coldly. Mold, of course. Isn't that what you were looking for? He showed the folder in Dahlia's backpack. Where's the backpack? I asked, realizing that it was pointless to pretend any further. In a safe place, just like the rest of the papers. You know, Dahlia was a smart girl, too smart for her own good, and you're following her path. He took a step towards me. Who did you meet today? Don't tell me you were at work. I called there. You weren't there. I stepped back to the window. I was dating a friend. I needed to talk it out. You're lying. He shook his head. You lie all the time. Do you think I can't see? Do you think I don't notice how much you've changed in the last 2 days? He came closer. You found Dahlia's folder, read the documents, and now you're plotting against me. I felt my back against the cold windowsill. There was nowhere to retreat to. I said, looking him straight in the eye. Killed our daughter for money? Ours? He chuckled. She was never my daughter. A spoiled, arrogant girl, always poking her nose into other people's business. She's become a nuisance. He spoke so calmly, so casually, as if he were discussing the weather forecast or utility bills. I realized with horror that I had never known the man I had lived with for 16 years. There was nothing human left in him. I asked, hoping that the microphone on my blouse was recording his every word. Howard shrugged his shoulders. For a new life. I'm tired, Vera. I'm tired of this marriage, this house, and the role of the perfect family man. I met the woman I love, but I needed money for a new life. Dahlia's insurance is only the first stage. He paused, looking at me intently. You should have been next. In 6 months, when all the noise around her death subsides. An accident, a tragic accident. The grieving spouse gets insurance and starts a new life with a clean slate. The perfect idea. You're a monster. I'm a pragmatist, he replied. I was patient, waiting for the right moment. But Dahlia ruined everything with her curiosity, and now you're going down the same path. He suddenly smiled, almost affectionately. But it's not too late to fix everything. Tell me, who did you meet today? Who did you show your documents to? If you're smart and help me cover my tracks, I might let you live. You'll just disappear, go somewhere far away, and never come back. I was silent. To name Robert is to sign his death warrant. Howard won't leave any witnesses. Are you silent? He sighed. Well, we'll have to find out another way. He took out his phone and opened an application. I wonder where you went after the pharmacy. Taxi, GPS, geo-trackers. There's nowhere to hide from them now. I felt cold. I hadn't thought of that. I was in a panic and completely forgot that it's so incredibly easy to leave a mark in the modern world. Cozy Kettle Cafe, he drawled, looking at the screen. It's a nice place. Who was your companion? He quickly scrolled through something on his phone. There's a security camera on the building opposite. Let's see. I rushed forward, trying to grab the phone, but Howard easily grabbed my hand. Don't be silly. It won't change anything. He jerked me toward him, spun me around, and twisted my arm behind my back. Before I could cry out, he clamped his free hand over my mouth. Quiet, not a sound. He pushed me to the wardrobe, opened the door, and took out a roll of reinforced duct tape. I'm sorry for being rude, but you're not giving me a choice. I tried to pull away, but his grip was like steel. He quickly and expertly wrapped duct tape around my wrists, then sat me down on the bed and taped a wide strip to my mouth. Sit still, he said, testing the strength of the makeshift shackles. In the meantime, I'll watch a movie about your meeting. Then we'll talk about your new friend. He went out, locking the door from the outside. I was left all alone, with my mouth taped shut and my hands tied. Panic hit me like an icy wave. What now? How do I call for help? How do I warn Robert? I looked around frantically. I need to get free. We need to find a way to cut the tape on our hands. I noticed a heavy crystal vase with flowers on the bedside table. If you break it, you can use a piece of glass to cut the ribbon. Carefully, trying not to make any noise, I got out of bed and went to the bedside table. Turning my back, I groped for the vase with my bound hands and slowly pushed it to the edge. The vase fell to the carpet with a thud, but did not break. I moaned softly in despair. What now? My gaze fell on the mirror of the makeup table. If you break it. But how? My hands are tied, my mouth is taped shut, and I can't scream. And then I noticed my mobile phone on the dresser. Howard forgot to pick it up in a hurry. If only she could send a message to Robert. I walked awkwardly over to the dresser. Turning my back with my hands tied, I groped for my phone. But immediately a new problem arose. How to remove the lock from the screen? The fingerprint scanner was on the back, and I had to contrive to reach it with my thumb. After several attempts, the screen lit up. Now I had to open the messaging app and find Robert's contact. I turned the phone around, trying to tap on the icons with my fingertips. Every move was difficult, but desperation gave me strength. I could hear Howard muttering from the other side of the door. It seems he watched the video and commented on it. There was less and less time left. Finally, I opened a conversation with Robert and started typing a message. Emergency, second floor. I didn't have time for more. A key turned in the lock. I quickly dropped the phone on the dresser and rushed to the bed. I managed to sit down a second before the door opened. Howard came in, holding his cell phone in his hands. His face was contorted with rage. Blake. Robert Blake. Is that who you were dating? Have you decided to connect your father's old connections? Did you think he would save you? He came up to me, looming over me. Bad choice, Vera. Very bad. Now I have to deal not only with you, but also with him. He abruptly tore the tape from my mouth. I cried out from the sharp pain. "I'm sorry," he grimaced. He went to the closet and took out a small briefcase. I opened it. Inside, I saw medical supplies, ampules, and syringes. "What are you going to do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Howard took out a syringe and an ampule. "To calm you down first. You're too excited, and we're going to have a long conversation." He filled a syringe with a clear liquid. "This will help you relax and answer my questions honestly. What have you told Blake? What are his plans?" I moved back to the headboard of the bed. "I didn't tell anyone anything, I swear." "It's a lie again?" He shook his head. "You were in the cafe for over an hour. You weren't silent." He closer, holding the syringe at the ready. I tried to crawl away, but my back hit the wall. "Please, Howard, let's talk. I'll do whatever you say. Just don't touch me. Last chance to tell the truth." He loomed over me. "What did you tell Blake?" I was silent. Howard sighed. "Well, that's a pity." He grabbed my shoulder, preparing to insert the needle. At that moment, the doorbell rang from downstairs, loud and insistent. Howard froze, listening. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked, squeezing my shoulder until it hurt. I shook my head. "No, maybe the neighbors or the courier." The call was repeated, this time more aggressively, almost aggressively. Howard hesitated, then put the syringe on the bedside table. "Don't move. I'll be back soon." He went out, locking the door again. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the creak of the front door opening and muffled voices. I couldn't make out the words, but one of the voices sounded familiar. Robert. Did he really get my message and come? It was my chance, probably the only one. I rushed to the dresser again, grabbed the phone. I quickly typed, "Bedroom, second floor, urgent help," and pressed send. The voices below grew louder. Howard seemed to be arguing with a visitor. I looked around for something that could help me get free. My gaze fell on a desk lamp with a heavy metal base. I walked over to the table, turned my back, and started rubbing the tape against the sharp edge. Slowly, painfully slowly, the tape began to give way. The sound of a door slamming came from below. Howard was coming back. I redoubled my efforts, feeling the tape finally tear. There is. His hands were released at the moment when his rapid footsteps were heard on the stairs. I hurriedly hid the pieces of tape under the bed and looked around for a weapon. Nothing suitable except for the same desk lamp. I grabbed it, yanked the power cord out of the socket, and stood outside the door. The key turned in the lock. The door opened and Howard stepped into the room. It was just... he didn't have time to finish. I brought the lamp down on his head with all my might. He staggered, but did not fall. He turned around, grabbing my hand. "Oh, you." We grappled in a fierce battle. He was stronger, but rage and fear gave me superhuman strength. I clawed at his face with my nails, trying to get to his eyes. Howard growled in pain and threw me against the wall. I hit my back, momentarily losing my breath. Howard was coming at me. Blood was oozing from a scratch on his cheek. "You're going to regret this." I was going to do it quickly and painlessly. Now it will have to be different. He grabbed a syringe from the bedside table. "First you tell me everything, and then we'll go to the bridge where Dahlia died." A tragic story. The mother did not survive the death of her daughter. She repeated her fate. I backed away until I hit the window. "You're not going to get away with this, Howard. Too many people already know." "You're bluffing," he grinned, "but you're going to tell the truth soon." He lunged with the syringe, but I dodged. The syringe stuck into the window frame and the needle broke. Howard cursed, threw away the useless tool. "Okay, let's do without chemistry." He grabbed me by the throat, pinning me against the wall. "Who knows about the documents?" I croaked, trying to pry his fingers open. "I sent everything to the police." "You're lying." He tightened his grip. "You wouldn't go to the police. You're too afraid that they won't believe you. Black spots swam before my eyes. I was critically short of air. With the last of my strength, I kneed him in the groin. He gasped, loosening his grip, and I pulled away. I rushed to the door, but Howard intercepted me, grabbing my hair. He spun me around, swinging to strike. I instinctively covered my arms, bracing myself for the pain, but there was no impact. Robert was standing in the doorway, pointing a gun at Howard. "The police. Hands behind your head, Howard." Howard froze, then slowly raised his arms. "What the hell? Who are you?" "Detective Robert Blake." Robert stepped into the room without lowering his weapon. "You are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Dahlia Warrens and the attempted murder of Vera Warrens." Howard laughed. "This is absurd. My stepdaughter died in a car accident. An accident. And my wife and I are just having a family quarrel." "A family quarrel with a syringe and talking about a bridge?" Robert nodded at the syringe lying on the floor. "It's all written down, Howard. Every word you say." He pointed at my miniature dictaphone. Howard paled, but quickly pulled himself together. "It's illegal. The recording has no legal effect without my consent." "In case of a threat to life, it matters," Robert objected. "Besides, we have something else. The pills you tried to give your wife turned out to be a mixture of potent substances in a lethal dose. We also found your car mechanic. He's already giving evidence, telling you how you paid him to sabotage the braking system in Dahlia's car." Howard's face contorted with rage. "You're lying. There is no proof." "There is," Robert replied calmly. "Bank transfers, phone records, and of course the documents that Dahlia collected. By the way, where are they?" Howard was silent, his lips pressed together. "It doesn't matter," Robert continued. "We'll find it during the search. Now turn around and put your hands behind your back." Howard slowly turned around, but instead of obeying, he suddenly rushed forward, trying to knock out the gun. Robert jumped back, keeping his distance. "Don't be silly, Howard. You're only making your situation worse." Howard looked around like a hunted animal. His gaze fell on the open window. Before Robert could react, he rushed towards him. "Stop," shouted Robert. But Howard had already jumped over the windowsill. A shot rang out. I screamed. Robert ran to the window and looked out. Damn, he jumped onto the roof of the annex. He turned to me. "Are you okay? Can you stay alone? I need to catch up with him." I nodded, still shaking. "Yes, go ahead. I'm fine." Robert squeezed my shoulder quickly. "Lock the door. The support group will arrive soon." He ran out of the room. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, then the slam of the front door. I went to the window and looked out. Howard ran through the garden to the back fence. Robert chased after him, holding a gun at the ready. It all happened so fast. Just a few minutes ago, I was on the verge of death. And now? Now Howard knew that he had been exposed. A desperate man is capable of anything. I suddenly remembered about the backpack. He said he hid it in a safe place. Where was I supposed to look for him? Car. He should be in the car. I quickly went downstairs and out the back door to the garage. Howard's SUV was still there. I opened the trunk and froze. Dahlia's backpack was lying there, and next to it was a canister of gasoline, a rope, and a sapper shovel. Everything was ready to stage my suicide. I grabbed my backpack, hugged it to my chest. All the documents were in place. At that moment, police sirens could be heard on the street. A few minutes later, the yard was filled with patrol cars. I went out onto the porch, holding my backpack in my hands. Time has stretched. It has lost its meaning. I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that someone had draped over my shoulder, went downstairs and out the back door to the garage. Howard's SUV was still there. I opened the trunk, froze. Dahlia's backpack was lying there, and next to it was a canister of gasoline, a rope, and a sapper shovel. Everything was ready to stage my suicide. I grabbed my backpack, hugged it to my chest. All the documents were in place. At that moment, police sirens could be heard on the street. A few minutes later, the yard was filled with patrol cars. I went out onto the porch, holding my backpack in my hands. Time has stretched. It has lost its meaning. I was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that someone had draped over my shoulders. There are uniformed people around again. I felt like a spectator in a movie theater. Finally, the door opened and Robert came in. His suit was rumpled and there was a bruise on his face, but his eyes were shining. "We've detained him, Vera. He's in custody. He resisted, tried to escape through the canal, but we cornered him." Robert sat down next to her. "It's over, Vera. He won't hurt anyone else." I shook my head. "It's not over, Robert. Dahlia is dead. My girl is not coming back." The tears that I had been holding back all this time finally broke through. I sobbed into Robert's shoulder, mourning my daughter, my lost years, my ruined life. "I know," he said softly, hugging me. "I know, but now justice will be served, and you will have the opportunity to move on for her sake." How? How can I continue to live after this? "Day after day," he said at last. "It's just one day after another, and one day it will get easier. Not today, not tomorrow, but it will be." In the meantime, I had to learn to breathe again. In a world where my Dahlia was no Lothi meantime, I had to learn to breathe again. In a world where my Dahlia was no longer there. In a world where my husband turned out to be a soulless monster. In a world where justice has prevailed, but it has brought no joy, but only bitter, scorched ashes on the site of what was once my life. After going through this hell, I realized on